You've probably noticed something strange. You hear a psychological explanation and think, I already knew this. Not because it's obvious, but because it feels familiar. Psychology rarely shocks us with new truths. Instead, it gives language to things we've silently lived with for years. And that's not a flaw, that's the point. Psychology doesn't exist to surprise you. It exists to help you trust what your nervous system learned long before words were available. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of what psychology teaches, you learned experientially, through relationships, losses, shame, repetition, and survival. Your body knew before your mind did. Take attachment theory. When psychology explains avoidant attachment, people say, I already knew I pushed people away. Of course you did. Your body learned that closeness wasn't safe long before psychology named it. Psychology didn't reveal something new. It simply validated something you were gaslighting yourself about. This is why psychological insight often feels like recognition, not discovery. The brain doesn't need new information. It needs permission. Permission to stop blaming itself. Permission to stop calling adaptation a flaw. Neuroscience shows that the brain organizes itself around predictability, not happiness, not truth. You knew they existed. You just didn't know they were intelligent. Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Psychology's real role is not to teach you new behavior. It's to make unconscious patterns visible. That's why it feels repetitive, because repetition is how the nervous system learns safety. Another reason psychology feels obvious is because it speaks in patterns, not events. You didn't need psychology to tell you that rejection hurts, but psychology explains why rejection rewires your self-worth. You didn't need psychology to tell you childhood matters, but psychology explains how early environments shape adult perception. In other words, psychology connects dots you already felt, but couldn't see all at once. And there's something deeply human about this. We often don't trust our own perception until an authority confirms it. So when psychology says, people who grew up unseen struggle with intimacy, what you're really hearing is, you weren't imagining it. That sentence alone heals more than advice ever could. This is why people return to psychology videos again and again. Not for answers, for recognition. Because being understood reorganizes the brain. Studies show that naming emotions reduces amygdala activation. Simply labeling what you feel calms the nervous system. Psychology doesn't fix you. It stabilizes you by removing confusion. And confusion is one of the most stressful states a human can experience. So yes, psychology often tells us what we already know. But knowing something intellectually and knowing it with compassion are two very different things. One creates insight, the other creates healing. Psychology gives structure to intuition, language to pain, context to behavior. It doesn't say, this is who you are. It says, this is how you adapted. And that distinction changes everything. Because once you understand that your patterns were once solutions, you stop fighting yourself. You stop asking, what's wrong with me? And start asking, what happened to me? That's not repetition, that's awakening.